So they're going to get a certain type of kid, and so there's only a few schools, some certain schools in um, their
they're in a
area.
limited pool, Charlie.
Yeah, they're in a limited pool.
They're limited pool. But I want to highlight something that you said, because I think it was a key component to this conversation. We're talking about, and I wrote down a phrase I think encapsulates the challenge. We're talking about the challenge between the delusion of what you've actually done, because you think you've really done something in high school. I'm the man, and but
a lot of them aren't even the man in high school. What they think.
Right. It's like, but we can fool ourselves into thinking, because of our circles and our situations, into thinking that we're owed something that we're not necessarily, especially at 18. That's not a hard thing to do at all, to fool yourself into that. Mm-hmm. And we're measuring that versus the reality of where we actually are. And there's got to be at some point a bubble burst to both of those things, right? Because we can't keep going down this path of potential, and then because here's the other side. What happens when the first 5-star, who was decent in high school and had put up some things, won a state championship, blah blah blah, goes and signs this big NIL deal, only to be a colossal failure in college?
And it's bound to happen.
It's eventually going to happen.
I mean, in some cases, it's already happened. I mean,
and it's failure. And Kendrick, I definitely want you to jump back in. It's not failure based on he doesn't have a college career that's okay. It's failure in that he doesn't meet the expectations of the money that is paid to him, and what they thought they would get back in return with his whatever.
Right, and Charlie's talked about this before in the past, that it's going to get to a point to where players going to be like, yo, I'm struggling. I need the ball more. I need more minutes to be able to fulfill these NIL obligations. And Charlie talked about that the first time we had this conversation.
What's the kid's name that was the starting quarterback at Oklahoma last year? Spencer Rattler?
Rattler.
Perfect example. Comes into the season, Heisman Trophy candidate. Everybody's just, they got him right next to Bryce Young. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. Halfway through the season, he's on the bench.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You think his NIL people were disappointed that, man, we put all this money into you and you're on the bench? We can't get any promotion from that.
It's added pressure on these kids, like Bryce Young, for example. All the money he had before he even stepped foot on the field, thank goodness he performed.
Right.
He didn't perform.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was my thing from the beginning of the season. Like, man, that's a lot of pressure for a 19-year-old kid.
Well, he's very poised. I mean, you saw that on the field, and in his life, he's just poised.
He's an exception to the rule, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Very
he's
much
an exception to the rule, and not as many student athletes have the backing or the people that surround him to be able to help him.
I'll give you the example of what the rule is Amani Bates.
Perfect example. Well,
recruit in the country.
Let's stay there for just a second, because this is an interesting situation that's happening in Louisville. Everything that we're talking about is happening in real time at the University of Louisville, because we're talking about a team who was on no ranking board whatsoever for next year, pre-ranking board for next year, was not even on a ranking board for the ACC, like not thought to necessarily be that competitive going into next year's ACC basketball. All of a sudden, could be in the next couple of months a top 10 team.
If they get Bates, they're going to be at least top 15.
Right. They get Bates. Well, if the blueprint of what it appears is coming, because there's like two or three guys in the transfer portal. If they all come, we're talking about a top 10 team now, and it's all centered around Kenny Payne's obviously very unique recruiting style. Which whatever that is, I don't know what he's doing or what they're saying.
Hey, you're pointing out that it's an Adidas school that's hired nothing but Nike people.
I merely bring notes to something that we've talked about here on this show. because it was just I just wasn't sure how that was supposed to work. How an Adidas guy or a Nike guy would recruit so well at an Adidas school, but apparently it's working quite well. So, do you guys have any problem with that? Like this overnight shift in this? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because this is quite fascinating, if you ask me. It's quite fascinating.
I'm just going off my experience as a coach. One of the things that I've come to,
as a state championship winning coach, by the way, you have to always
state championship win. We got to put that in front of your name. It's like we have to put the
we got to give you your proper adjectives. That's
right.
Okay, whatever. My team last year, we didn't have as many quote unquote college ready or college players in the sense of, I think we will have as many because they're just younger. But we had uber talent. We had like 10, 11 guys the year before. Not last season, but the year before. Mm-hmm. We had about 10 to 11 guys that could really play, probably college ready. And some of these guys were from this year as well. But that was one of the toughest teams to coach because we had so much talent and they didn't want to buy into certain roles. And so one of the things when you're constructing a team, as we probably seen with some of the Cal teams and even some of the Duke teams, mm-hmm. you know, you get to a certain point where you have so much talent, these guys have to buy into certain roles. And if they don't, you run into the chemistry issue where it just doesn't work. And so it takes a great coach to be able to bring a certain type of culture, a certain type of player in to be able to fit certain roles in order for things to go. And just getting the best talent is not always the way to go because you have to coach that talent up. And if they're not ready to buy into doing what you've asked them to do or being coachable, man, it is tough. And so I think one of the things that Coach Ham does really, really well is he gets a 4-star or even a 5-star to buy into sitting on the bench or coming off the bench based upon whatever the team model, and they're still getting opportunities in the NBA. Now, he didn't have a bunch of 5-stars, a bunch of 4-stars. You know, he kind of developed some of them, and he tells them what they're supposed to be, you know, what they're going to do, and not tell them like what they're going to do, but, you know, how the style they're going to play. Mm-hmm. He gets them to play a certain way. And so I'm sitting here, you know, watching and listening to, you know, all the different teams that are trying to get the most talent. That talent has to work together. And if they're not willing to work together, then that's like the worst season ever. I'm just saying from a coach's perspective, it's the worst season ever when you have talented guys that don't want to buy into a certain role.
And we've saw that unfold in Kentucky a few times now. Last year being the most recent example. But I'll take that a step further, Charlie. I think you said it so eloquently. But now add in the fact that before I even signed on to this team, I signed a deal that says I'm the man. Right. So now you got me on the bench. Man, This is a problem. So now you're talking about team chemistry. Now you're talking about bitterness and frustration. And you saw the mass exodus at Kentucky this year.
Well, then here's the other part, taking it even a step further. Okay, you signed this NIL deal, you're not playing. Now you want to transfer, but guess what? You can't leave because you signed this NIL deal.
You signed an NIL deal. Now you're getting the early lesson in contract negotiation.
So let's just take this to Miami. since this is out there. So how do you rectify Isaiah Wong's bitterness towards this new kid that just came in, is making
Great
more
question.
money than him, and we're talking about mental health and all these different things. We're adding to this mental health issue, a crisis, by adding this dynamic, which I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen, but we talked about that this is going to happen because they're teenagers, and then we got adults trying to help them out in this whole mix. And as we all know, who gets in the middle of adult issues? The kids. And so now, how does Isaiah Wong, unless he knows the Lord and he understands forgiveness and bygones be bygones and all that kind of stuff, but how does he rectify him and his other kid that just came in is making more money than him? How they going to work together? That's a question for Coach Larinaga on how he's going to manage that piece, because he hasn't said anything. I mean, Miami hadn't come out and said anything on this whole matter, as far as I know. But it's very interesting. It'll be very interesting to see how they work together.
2 words. 2 words. Healing retreat. You got to figure out a way to go sit those guys down in a room and have that conversation, have some tough conversations. I mean, I don't think
that's like a quick trip to live on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're headed to the Gatlinburg Mountains, or mountains in Gatlinburg rather, and you're gonna have to sit and have a kumbaya moment. Because I mean, you're 1,000% correct. And guess what? That's gonna happen every year. That's gonna happen every single year. Right. The next guy is gonna get the better deal. You thought Bryce Young's deal was great. This next Alabama 5-star or whatever.
You know what's going to end up happening is the Sam Bradford rule that they hit the NFL with when these quarterbacks kept coming in getting more and more money.
No
and
cap.
the veteran quarterbacks are like, hold up. And then the Sam Bradford deal happens. That's going to come too. There's going to be a cap on what a freshman can make.
And then inevitably, let's keep going down this rabbit hole. Yeah. Somebody's going to challenge that, because they're going to challenge that in court and say, you can't cap my earning potential.
You can't cap my earning potential.
Yeah,
exactly.
So we're in a weird space, man.
Unless it's collective bargaining and all that.
And there's no collective bargaining.
And there's no collective bargaining, right.
And to which eventually the players are going to have a union.
This is unbelievable.
Which to me, I'm still trying to figure out, how would you have a union when you have so many student athletes?
They've tried it.
Yeah, I know.
But
who's gonna vote for? I mean, who's gonna do the voting? Like, you have to have a vote on who is the rep, who the reps are, and all those types of things. And when you have like so many student athletes, are they going to have their own swimming? Break it all down to the different individual sports.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. This is this is a rough situation. But it's
interesting though.
It's fascinating, and it makes for great fodder to talk about in forums like this. But it just feels like we're headed towards some places that are going to be wildly uncomfortable. Like, I'm gonna just tell you, and I'm saying this not just as a journalist, or a podcaster, but as a fan. While I'm excited on some level of what Louisville is doing, it is wildly uncomfortable. It's wildly uncomfortable because it's happening so fast. Like, you go from purity to relativity overnight.
Louisville's kind of an outlier on the fact that couldn't happen any school. I mean, there's an advantage to being one of the blue bloods. U of L is considered a blue blood.
And I keep saying that to myself.
Going to happen that fast.
And I keep saying that to myself. What's happening because we're blue blood? Yeah.
And I mean, just like Kentucky. Look how fast Kentucky. It's eerily similar.
It's eerily similar.
Calipari. When all of a sudden UK went to only having Patrick Patterson to now all of a sudden having John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Daniel Orton.
but the challenge of that is, and I'd love to hear you say something about this as well, Charlie. It feels like that this quick turnaround, this level of recruiting success that goes from, like I said, obscurity, you're just barely getting what you can get to you have your pick of the litter. It doesn't feel like it comes with sunshine. It feels like it comes with clouds. And that's what makes it weird, because it's like, should I be celebrating this, or should I be nervous that we're just one day away from a massive infraction situation? Like what?
Well, I really don't think that's the infractions piece. You know, sometimes it's about who it is.
Yeah,
because because Coach Payne has been successful. He's been in college. He's been in NBA. Yeah, he's also surrounded himself with some quality assistant coaches that have done it at high levels in college as well. And so I think a lot of times, you can speed it up with the right person, with the right people. And, I think that plays a big part in this probably quick turnaround. I'm not saying they're going to have success on the court, but in recruiting, you can do it based upon his resume, the resumes that he has, around him. And so.
Smile.
Yeah,
Kenny Payne's smile going to get him in a lot of front doors.
Yeah. So, I mean, that your name recognition can get you, in doors that most people may not be, first-year coaches may not be able to get into.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
just because of your resume.
Well, listen, it's incredibly impressive. Like, let's not kid ourselves. The fact that in a month or 2 months, however long he's been there, which it hadn't been that long, you've been able to crack the code of, relevance for Louisville that they haven't had in 4 years. That's impressive. I mean, that's really, really, really impressive. And it's almost like people forgot about the scandals, forgot about everything, and now, they're the Louisville of old now. And it's
they may have forgotten about them now, but as soon as this game start and they're on ESPN, it's going to be at least 15 minutes of the broadcast is going to be bringing all that stuff.
Without question. Without question.
I will give. I mean, I've never been one to be really critical of Chris Mack, and I'll give him one of those big time recruits that Kenny Payne landed was already he was already committed to Louisville under Chris Mack,
right?
And Kenny Payne got him to stay. And so you hire a staff with Nolan Smith and Danny Manning on it too. I mean,
like
Charlie said, I mean, you're bringing in some heavy hitters to be there.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Matter of fact, I got a critique for Danny Manning. Threw out the first pitch at the U of L game yesterday and didn't even throw it from the mound. You got to go to the mound if you throw out the first pitch. You threw it from in front of the mound.
That's where most people throw it from.
No, you got to go to the mound, man.
Listen, I get it, but I think that fear of being on ESPN is strong.
But he threw a great pitch. He threw it like somebody not trying to impress anybody. You just throw it.
Hey, that's right.
And he did it perfect.
That's right.
You got to go to the mound, though.
You know why? You know why it was perfect? Hey, you know why it was perfect? Because he threw it in front of the
You got to go to the mound.
You can't mess up the mound.
It's a piece of rubber up there. It'll be fine. Now, Nolan's first pitch the other week did not go so well. But they've been great guys already. They're out in the community. I ran into Nolan at the Derby, and they're out in the community. It's not just like they're there and just you don't see them. You see them out in the community all the time. They're doing a great job already.
You said Nolan's did not go well. Where did he throw his from?
He was at the Bats game, and he threw his from the mound.
And therein lies the problem. He watched Nolan and he said, "I'm not going to be your."
I respect it.
Well,
he's embarrassed, but you respect it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't want anything to mess up recruiting. So Daddy's like, nah, I just need to get it across the plate.
Throwing out a first pitch messed up recruiting. They had problems going in.
Everything messes up recruiting. You know that. Any weird story, man. All that stuff matters. All that stuff matters, man.
I'm just glad to see these guys are out in the community and they're not just rolled up and being standoffish. So you see that. You see that all the time. But no, they're out there amongst the people, and they've been really good so far. Matter of fact, when I ran into Nolan Smith at the Derby, he's down there with everybody else.
Listen, this has been a fascinating conversation, which is not going away. I'm sure as this thing continues to unfold throughout the year, we will have more of these conversations because the NIL is here to stay, the transfer portal is here to stay, and the complaints of both are here to stay. So we're not going anywhere with any of it. I don't know. You know, we're chopping down new trails for all of this, and I'm not sure where the end result is going to be, but it feels like it's going to be something explosive because how could it not at this point?
Right. Yeah, I think we're going to see a total shift in college athletics in the next five years.
Absolutely.
So I have this question.
Yes, sir.
How is it that a legislature can put a law into make a law, and we can't challenge it as individuals, but the NCAA or NFL or NBA or anyone else put in some type of policies, it is always challenged because the people that have to follow the policies didn't have a say at the table. Is it because they have representatives that vote the law into, that represent the people, when we know sometimes that is not the case for everybody?
The government does whatever it wants.
Okay, so that is my thing with people saying the kids don't have a say in XYZ. Like when the NCAA comes up with some type of legislature, they're saying that the kids don't have representation or say in those deals.
They don't. Really?
They don't. Right. This is an interesting question you just proposed here, Charlie.
But I'm just saying, are we saying that our representatives who are voting on these bills that most times go into law, that the kids have that we have representatives there to vote for us, is what we're saying. So we have to live with whatever the law is.
I think the difference being that those representatives are they're voted into office by the people, whereas whoever making the laws in the NCAA, the students don't vote those people in. And
well, I think it's also the interest of both. Like the interest of government is usually centered around private business and political interest and PAC and all that stuff.
Or in Kentucky, the cornbread mafia.
Right. Whereas in the NCAA, the interest is private business, and maybe it's not any different, is it? It's never the people that feel the policy.
People are voted into office, and the NCAA people nobody knows how they're getting it.
Right, but the interest is still the same because they don't care about who is affected by the policy. They only care about how the policy affects the big. Exactly. So now, how is that possible? I think it's because one, there's no union to challenge it, right?
They do have a student. They do have student leadership council or some form of it that they put in place.
Strong. It's not as strong enough.
Yeah, but it's right. Yeah, it's not. They don't have any power though. Like they're
okay. Hold on.
Go ahead.
So you're saying they don't have any power?
Well, they do, but they don't know that they do. How about that?
Okay, but they're at the table. If you're at the table, then you do have some form of power to be able to state whatever it is from a student perspective. You can state that. And just like I'm on a board and I have a vote, but I also can state things that I may want, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go into action just because I brought it up.
Well, the truth of the matter is, Charlie, to your point, the students have way more power than they think they do, because it's like the kids at Northwestern were saying, we're like the labor force. So technically, you don't have college football if we don't play.
Yeah, so they can easily not play, but that's easier said than done.
But right, I was going to say the problem is getting 300 schools worth of players on board with that concept of in order to truly make this what we want, we have to truly band together and say we're not playing until the rules change. And then they also got to be in agreement on what the rules are. So,
well, I'll just say this as a former student athlete. Of course, we didn't have any of this. This leeway to be able to transfer like we wanted to be able to make, name, image, and likeness, which I would have loved.
Oh my God!
To be able to do have some of these opportunities, and I was brought back that I was.
Charlie, if you was a kid today, when you had to punt, you would have transferred.
Probably not, but. And yes, today's kids, that probably wouldn't have. Their minds, I should say, it's not everybody,
right?
But the mindset of the kid today, I'll just say that. Yes, I'd have probably been in the transfer portal because I didn't get a chance to play. And the reason, and I say this, because I wasn't thinking about transferring, but I was talking about me losing a year of eligibility to do something that I didn't sign up for. But that was in my immature state of mind.
But couple that with the fact that Charlie Ward, or modern day Charlie Ward, was doing something he was asked that he didn't want to do, and he'd already signed this nice NIL deal with Taco Pete's, and so now you're stuck both ways, right? Because you're not really fulfilling the NIL responsibility that you signed for, because you're only on the field for 10 minutes a game.
Well, let me just clarify.
Not even that. We're punting.
As a punter, if I'm doing Taco Peaks, then that means that I'm in today's society, I'll just be doing some like influencing, because you're not going to get no major deals being the punter.
They probably would have pulled you a deal that time you tried to hit the roof in Syracuse.
No, that was only one time.
He's like, that was one time. You had to keep bringing that up, Kendrick Haskins.
But I had, but after that, just to, kind of piggyback after that, I played basketball, and it wasn't until my third year, after my third year in school, that I got an opportunity to play quarterback. And so the NIL deals probably would have gotten bigger.
Oh, they've been huge. Yeah.
My senior year,
Yeah.
my last year, because my junior year, I struggled out of the gate, and I was a first year starter. And so the NIL deals probably have been going out to speak to, local elementary schools or whatever the case may be. It had been very small, but the deal would have gotten bigger my senior year, going into my senior year, because of what I was able to accomplish my junior year. And that's the reason why I say, sometimes you have to earn your NIL deals. The NIL deals may be smaller at one point during your college career, but they can become much bigger the more you produce. And so you think about Bryce Young this year. I'm sure his NIL deal is probably triple with less,
Making even more money. Yeah.
Yes, with less time. So he's probably doing, easy type deals just because he won the Heisman, and he had a very good year last year, and he's going to another year, which is probably his last year in college. Right. And so he'll probably make more doing appearances. This is what I'm saying. 2-hour appearances, he can probably make more now because of what he did last year. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times that's not what we're starting to see. We're starting to see these deals come out, big deals come out with players who haven't even touched the field.
Right.
My only challenge of what you're saying is this, and I think you're spot on 100%. The only thing I would add to that is the challenge is always going to be in front of us, because I'm a poor kid from City X, and my family needs this money right now. To me, the Isaiah Wong, I don't know his family, I don't know his background, but that story reeked of, I need it now. We need it now. We want it now. So that's the other part. We want it now as opposed to we need it now. Where are we on that spectrum, right? So if we're in a dire situation, I'm gonna press harder, maybe even in an uncomfortable fashion, to get what I want because my family has to have it. Or we're just greedy and we think we can act, like you said, we're offended because this kid's making more. He hadn't done half of what I've already done. So it's that weird catch-22 of what you're saying and not being able to be patient enough to allow the thing to unfold. Because Chad asked a great question here at the bottom. He said, well, does the deal expire when you turn pro? And the answer to that is probably yes and no, because yes, it's not the same deal when you turn pro, but if you build a substantial enough relationship like Bryce Young will do with nationally corporate type situations, they're not going to abandon you. This is working. So we just transition the deal into something else. So now it looks and feels different as a pro.
Yeah. Well, I would say rebuttal, but my to add to what you just mentioned about they need it now.
Yeah.
I'm not against that part of it.
Right.
And yes, I think we all need it now. If you're in dire need, straight, whatever the case may be, I think we all desire. I mean, I would love to have more, to be able to help more people, doing what I'm doing.
Right.
Kendrick would like to be paid more. You would like to be paid more. Everybody would like to be paid more for what they're doing. LeBron James, he would never get what he's worth playing basketball.
Right.
He would love to have more because he's worth more, but he understands that there's a cap and all those types of things, and he can't earn what he desires from playing basketball.
Tom Brady, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that's doing things, great things, that's not getting paid what they're worth.
Right.
But what are we doing with what we have? That is my whole thing. If you're making $100,000, what are you doing with that money?
Which is the
Because
real problem. Yeah.
yes, because if you're seeking $400,000 and you're not doing much with the $100,000 except for spending on things that, yes, you may have needs, but are you spending it on needs and wants, or just needs, and saving some for the wants later and adding that up? And that's my whole I don't say cry, but that's the thing I'm always asking is, everybody wants more, but what are you doing with what you have now?
Yeah. That's a great place to pause this conversation, because I think the gospel has been preached according to Charlie Ward, and it was good. It was good. I told you it was gonna be a good grade. I knew where this was headed. So we do want to give our shout outs before we go. I definitely want to give and send love. And I actually wanted to ask Charlie about this, if he had the opportunity to meet this great legend, Bob Lanier, who unfortunately passed this week. And we want to send our thoughts and prayers to his family and to the entire NBA family for such a tremendous loss. Did you ever get a chance to hang out with Mr. Bob Lanier? No humble place, just conversation.
When you talk about hang out, like,
or just talk to or meet, and
yeah, I met all those legend guys in passing in some form or fashion. I know he was heavy into the NBPA at one point, and also the NBA with the league. I think he came around and did some educational courses with that group, and so just unfortunate. He's a great legend, of course. Meant a lot to the game. I just remember the lefty, watching him as a kid, which was very, very cool. But definitely sad to see him pass away.
So that's I'll figure that would be our corporate all-inclusive shout out that we would give to Coach or to the former player and NBA Hall of Famer Bob Lanier. But do you guys have any other shout outs? I believe, Charlie, you have a significant shout out that you would like to give.
Yeah, you gave me a shout out before the show.
Right. I can't imagine what that shout out would be, or if I received a text from him about the shout out at all.
Yeah.
He's giving a shout out to USC, I think.
Our Lady Seminoles, FSU, won their regional. I think it was yesterday. And so they'll be heading to the national championships. I think it's next week. But shout out to, I think her name is Beatrice Walling. She's from Sweden. And her parents got an opportunity to come down and watch her perform on yesterday for the first time. She's a senior. And so that was cool. And she was actually the regional champion. I think she shot a 6 under.
Oh, wow.
You didn't say it was golf.
Yeah, it's golf. My bad. Lady Seminoles golf.
Yeah. Is she going to turn pro after this senior LPGA and all that good stuff?
I'm sure that's where she's heading. She's 6 under. I'm sure she's heading to the professional ranks.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Right. Always go Seminoles.
Yeah, go Noles. Go Noles.
All right, Kendrick, you got any shout outs?
I'll shout out the city of Louisville. Oaks and Derby went off great. Weather was not great on either day. But, we still had over 100,000 at Churchill Downs on Derby Day. I think it was 70 on Oaks Day and over 100 on Derby Day. So shout out. It was good to see the city somewhat back to normal. It's still not 100%, but it was good to have a normal derby this year. Because it was the coolest thing. And it's one of those things where you see it all the time, so you take it for granted that you're with somebody who's seeing it for the first time. So when the race actually went off, we was at our set that we have on the first turn. And it's myself, Kent Taylor, my sports director, and Connie Leonard, his wife. You know, we're at the Derby every year. We've seen it 100 times. So we were just watching it, and like we've had so many new employees come into WAVE over the last couple of years during COVID and people going in. So like, it was a good 10 people around us that had never experienced Derby before. And so to see the looks on their faces when they sing My Old Kentucky Home and when the horses come around the first turn, it was really cool. So, shout out to the city of Louisville. Shout out to my co-workers who experienced Derby for the first time.
That's cool. That's very cool. Well, speaking of that, they say it's the greatest 2 minutes in sports. I have to say this year, I'm not sure they disappointed at all because it was a really, really impressive race. So I've never given a shout out to a horse before, but shout out to Rich Strike because that was incredible. That was absolutely incredible. And Sonny Leon, the jockey, who steered the thing like I didn't know if I was watching the Derby or the Indianapolis 500 the way he weaved through the track. It was amazing. It was incredible.
And shout out to the trainer, Eric Reed. You know, he's a couple of years ago, he had his barn catch on fire and he lost 23 horses. And
wow.
Yeah. And so to be able to regroup and get back with a horse that it took two other horses in front of him to scratch for him to even make the Derby.
Which he found out 30 seconds before the deadline. You can't make this up. What a story.
Literally 30 seconds before the deadline is when he found out he was in.
One of the most matter-of-factly moments in the history of sports. Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?
So where's the owner from?
He's from Kentucky.
Some of the trainer?
The trainer is from Kentucky.
Yeah.
And his farm is in Lexington.
Did he do an investigation on why his barns got burned up?
I don't think it was any foul play. I think it was I forget what the story, because I remember when it happened. But yeah.
Well, you know me.
I know. I know. It wasn't foul play, Charlie.
Journalistic Charlie.
You might need to check on that. Because he finally get an opportunity and his horse barn burn up and he lose some horses.
Well, he didn't have that horse at the time.
I'm just saying.
He's only 3 years old.
when we start investigating horses that win and all that kind of carrying on.
And just for you, Charlie, it was released yesterday that all the horses' drug tests came back clean. All.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
Everybody.
Good.
Hilarious.
Even though the horse won the Derby, he was trying to bite the pony afterwards.
Yeah. The horse had some mental issues, but at least he can run straight. So there you go. So that's all that really matters at this point. Listen, been another fun show. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Those of you who are rewatching, I hope you've enjoyed it. We will be back again and do it all over again next week. I don't know if we'll be talking about this, but we'll be talking about something, and you'll enjoy it.
Something will happen between now and next week.
Something will happen. Something will happen. We'll be here
next week. We'll get Charlie on a humble flex.
We let him slide a lot today. I got to be honest with you. We let him slide quite a bit, and that's fine. That's fine. Like sometimes you just got to ride the wave of the moment, and that's what we did. So with that being said, that is Charlie Ward, our Heisman Trophy and state championship coach.
And national championship and member of a national championship team.
Member of a national championship team. He doesn't like to, talk about his contribution. But he was on the team. Right. And then of course
been the richest man in Tallahassee.
Would have been back then. Exactly. Would have been retro. Maybe there's a way to retroactive some of this stuff. We need to look deeper into the NIL rules.
My team can use.
The team can use the funds, right?
And my foundation, our foundation.
There you go. We will have a conversation after the show. And then of course, that's Kendrick Haskins, the Hall of Famer. Just high and drunk on the power of positivity right now. So, and so we are glad to have him. I'm Lloyd Spence. We'll see you guys next week. That's not the right outro. You've been listening to Believe in the ACC with Charlie Ward, Lloyd Spence, and Kendrick Haskins. Please like, follow, subscribe, and share from the Noisemakers page on Facebook and on YouTube. And you can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be heard.